Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, what I want to do is to pick up where I left off in the video about Fedora and Ubuntu and talk a little bit about what I've been exploring as far as alternatives. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to present a number of distributions which do not use systemd. They are considered systemd free. And we're going to look at those in a number of ways. To begin with, this was kind of a fun project for me. It was, whenever they're born out of necessity, is just you have a goal and you kind of slow down a little bit because this is something that I'm going to use. This is not a recommendation for you. It's more of this is the process that I followed to determine where I was going to go. And I thought, well, maybe this might help you in your journey as well if you choose to make a similar departure from systemd. So the original goal was much simpler. It was to evaluate a range of system-free operating systems, and then take some real-world use cases. What does that landscape look like? The developers one, I think that's pretty obvious. But what isn't maybe so obvious is that developers have multiple projects going on. They're going to be wanting to have predictable environments. They don't necessarily live in stability because a lot of times whatever drives the development of the software package they're working on is going to be dependent upon the things they need to bring in, right? And so if you have multiple projects going on, the chances of having a library conflict go way up for them. So they generally deal with that using containers. So they'll need that kind of functionality. The casual user, they don't care about any of the technical stuff. I just want to turn on the machine, do whatever I need to do, and get off. They might be consuming content. They might be writing an email or sending messages. They might even be, writing a Word document or keeping a spreadsheet of their expenses or whatnot. But, they're just not interested in all the technical stuff. They just want things to work. Audio and video creators, we want real-time performance. We need things that are low latency and don't take a lot of time. None of us like to, I'm particularly real impatient about waiting for a video to render out, and so I'll just get up and walk away. So yeah, it's not something that really bothers me all that much, but some people, if they're sitting there, that's time that they're not being able to do anything because their machine's tied up. The self-learning system admin, they're trying to understand the system at a low level. So they need technical details and they need to know, how to reproduce whatever they're doing in a work environment or on a different machine at home. The security and privacy advocates who value transparency, I'm not going to concentrate too much on that today. Because those needs are not met by a systemd free distro yet. It's just not. So, Tails and Unix and all of those things, they require systemd to operate. What about the person that maybe they don't have the latest and greatest hardware, or they might just be someone that I don't want all this bloat. I just want thin and run quick. Taking a look that Debian 13 and EndevourOS were included in these benchmarks. And the reason is that I needed something to compare against. And so you can think of that as a control to gauge how the modern systemd performs relative to alternatives. So let's start with Debian 13. That is a control systemd distro. Yes, it's in alpha testing, at least officially, although I think here pretty quickly it will move to beta. Usually by this time in May, this week or next, it'll flip to beta, and then things get real serious, and they start, shutting down the repos from accepting any changes, just to make sure there's no last minute surprises that blow something up in their distribution. Debian is one of those rare distribution houses that doesn't ship anything until it absolutely is working. Yeah, they don't rush. They don't care about deadlines so much. They care about releasing something that's going to work. But I would warn that because that is an alpha state, be careful of making too many judgment calls about the results, because it's not final, and that can change between now and the release date of Debian 13. EndevourOS, that's a rolling release based on Arch, and so I also, one of the first ones I'm putting on my list is Slack. The reason for that is that that's the original flamekeeper of Unix, the Unix philosophy in particular. So I wanted to make sure that they were included in this, because they require, more work on the part of you, because you have more manual configuration to do. But if you're used to Arch, yeah, you're going to do it there too. So, and there's no dependency resolution that's done inside of Slackware. That's why they tell you install everything. And then as you build onto it with additional applications, you need to check to see if you've opened up any dependency issues with what we just talked about, like APIs. One of the funny things that I remember, it's a story that I remember from years ago in some of the news group. The community they brought up this debate on, hey, what if Linux goes sideways and they become corporate owned and they start doing things that bloat the system and they're not in the interest of open source? What alternatives do we have? And so they began exploring as a community. One of the questions was, what about adopting the BSD kernel and just moving to that? Well, this is one of the things I remember is that Patrick Volterding, he didn't commit to it, but he did recognize that the community had a valid concern, and that, yeah, but I can't imagine that level of work. Let's talk about Devuan for a minute. So Devuan was a fork of Debian that occurred after Debian, which was the longtime holdout against using systemd. Devuan was born out of, I guess you would call it a protest, maybe a protest distribution, but they just kept systemd out and kept going. You have a choice between XFCE, Mate, Cinnamon. You can even put KDE on it if you want. LXTE, LXQT. I think those are some of the ones I saw on the list. So, and also Mate, of course. I was able to harden Devuan using the exact same scripts that I use for my Debian servers. The only difference was I do have a few places where I restart services, and depending upon which choice you make, whether it's sysv init or openrc or run it, you do have some differences in the commands that start and stop and status, the running of your services. I did next is Void Linux, and Void Linux is fast, it's light, it's extremely customizable. It uses run it, and it supports Musel if you wish to use that. I believe it's an option whether you use libc or Musel. The real issue that I ran into with Void, though, was I could not run the benchmarks. Apparently, there's some difference between what Phoronix has tested and what Void is supporting, because, man, they would not link up. It was like they were speaking different languages, and that just wasn't going to work. So, yeah, it's not a fault of Void, and it's not a fault of Phoronix. This is the reality of open source, that when you're dealing with packages that are maintained by different people, sometimes you have dependencies on versions that are different. And especially in this world of change where, nothing is static for more than 10 minutes, these are just things we have to deal with. So once that gets resolved, I'll do a future benchmark on Void. The next one I looked at was AntiX, mainly because I've always been interested in AntiX. It is a Debian-based distribution, and It is actually the forerunner of MX in a lot of ways. But AntiX has a different philosophy than MX does. It is built for speed. It is built for customization. It doesn't put a whole bunch of fluff in it. It is stripped down to the bone, and it is systemd free, and they use window managers by default. So one of the things that you might run into when you first launch it is you might be shocked by the maybe late 1990s, early 2000s look and feel to the GUI. Don't let that bother you. You can easily customize it. It is ICE WM that they use by default, but there are two others on the menus that you can choose from that will switch seamlessly. One is Fluxbox, one is JWM, or Joe's Window Manager if you prefer. And so you can pick from those three, but it doesn't prevent you from using any other window managers with it, as far as I know. But yeah, then you can get back and to making it look like a more modern system. It's just, some of that 3D artwork is a little, it's like looking back at some SIGGRAPH stuff back in the late 90s. But I mean, you can fix that though. It's not a problem. So we'll talk more about it in the benchmark results when we get there. So MX Linux seems to be the next thing out. MX Linux is kind of it's a smoother distribution, again built on Debian base. It has a lot of the kind of tools that you would need for a lot of the system use cases, and we'll go through. I have a checklist on all of those, but it has great AB's tool support. It has, and there's no hand holding that's required with it. It comes up and it just works. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with MX, but after using it for a few days, I really liked it. I know there's some people that don't like it, and there's some people that really love it. I guess I'm kind of an in-between. I'm not sure if I like it or hate it. It's just, it works for me. It does what I need it to do. Devuan does too. So the only caveat is to make sure that when you're installing, you pick either OpenRC, or at least you understand the differences between OpenRC and System 5 init, because those changes all are dependent on how you manage or create new services. Although I have to say that once you've templated a script for System 5 init, and you can just take one of the others and template it, it's pretty easy. So it's not hard at all. The other one I looked at was Alpine Linux, and mainly because this was a surgical. This is a very surgical distro. It is seriously small. It's tiny. It's secure. It boots faster than anything I've ever seen boot before. They have a package manager that it doesn't have a lot of packages in it, but man, the ones that have install very fast. They do, it's like that. It's like as soon as you enter the command and hit enter, it's done. And the reason for that is they don't create all this cache stuff that they have to manage. They bring down the thing when you call for it. So it's kind of instantaneous. I don't think it has the package depth of Debian or Arch, but if it has the packages that you're looking for, it makes a really good server. I wouldn't say you would want to use this as a desktop environment. It's not very easy to set up. It did the best on the Z standard compression test in the benchmark, but as far as the rest of them, it was on par with the top finishers. So it does run fairly well. I mean, Alpine, after all, is the default or has been the default for Docker. I don't know if it still is, but that was always the default OS under the covers. The other one I looked at was Artix Linux, and that's because I felt that there's still a lot of people that like Arch and they want to use Arch, and so I wanted to make sure that one of the choices that I looked at was Arch. But Artix is it installs like pure Arch, except there is no systemd. So that means you get a rolling release, you have access to the AUR and the speed that you're used to, and the pain from it was finding applications that depended on systemd that wouldn't work. So yeah, I mean it's a lot to expect from a distribution to go and curate. Was it over 98,000 plus packages in the repos and AUR? I have no idea how many total there are now, but yeah, it's a lot. It's more than you'll ever need, that's for sure. So yeah, I would approach this as it is. It's a good experimenter's release. It's a good place to go find out where some of the and poke things a little bit, but don't be surprised if you run into what I ran into a few times and with some of the packages. So not being compatible with that were requiring compatibility with systemd. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention was MX actually has a shim that makes it look like there's systemd running, and so it kind of has the interfaces that the apps are looking for. I don't know how complete it is, but it seems to work fairly well, at least. Maybe that's something that you can do for Artix as well. I don't know if it's packaged up in a way that you could do that. But as far as the installation of Artix, you have two choices. You can do it the Arch way, which is build it up from scratch and customize it the way you want it to, put on the packages that you need, but don't take any of the ones you don't want. So yeah, it's good for that, but they also have an offline mode, and I tested both, and was able to get it to work with both of them. I did it the Arch way first, and then I did the offline mode, which uses the standard GUI installer, and then it makes the decisions a lot easier, a lot quicker, and it just worked. Everything came up just fine. FreeBSD was next on the list. I know it's not Linux, it's Unix, but let's be real here. If you'll build your system and your services and your world one configuration at a time here. It's FreeBSD or OpenBSD, or GhostBSD, they're all fairly straightforward to set up. They are very different from Linux, though. Linux never, ever adopted the POSIX. They have some POSIX compatibility, but they are not 100% POSIX. There's more on there than just worrying about the permissions. There's a lot of testing that goes on in the POSIX. But if you've ever fought system CTL to restart a service, you'll be amazed to find how fast FreeBSD can be once you learn how to work with rc.conf. It's usually 2 lines of code that goes in there in order to launch an application, unless there's dependencies. Like if you're doing GNOME, then you got to have all the GNOME dependencies in there with it. But if you're now, ZFS is the default file system on FreeBSD now. So make sure that you have enough RAM in the system to support it. Now, generally, you can control how much RAM it's going to use, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But if you have big data pools, yeah, it's going to want some RAM. You can control that by creating the ARC and creating your slog as on its own disk drive. But there are also variables that you can use to control the size that your ARC reaches and the size of your intent log. So yeah, you can deal with those problems. So one of the problems, I also ran into problems here, and it had to do with, again, Phoronix Test Suite. Phoronix Test Suite is written for Linux. It's not written, although they say, well, we've tested this on Mac OS and FreeBSD, and that may be true, but they don't tell you what they had to do to make it work. One of the things you have to worry about is you need to make sure that the Linux compatibility layers are on. So the first thing I ran into was I installed 9 tests and only 3 of them installed. So yeah, I had 6 sitting there going, uh-oh, now what am I going to do? So I looked at the message and it said you need to have the Linux compatibility layer on. That's fairly trivial to do. There's instructions in their manual about how you can do it without even rebooting the machine. The problem that you're going to run into, though, is that for Artix, for some reason, is still based on CentOS 7. So a lot of the libraries they want to pull from is from that. Well, that's dead. It's deprecated. It's not even supported. No one's maintaining that. So FreeBSD also offers a couple other choices, and one of them is Rocky Linux. But Rocky Linux doesn't have the same libraries as CentOS 7 had. So I ran into this problem where I got to 6. Let's put it that way. I didn't get all 9 of them. I got to 6 of them. So I ran the test with the best I could, but the other 3, just no. It did RAM, but it wouldn't do the Z standard test because it needed more. What I want to do is I want to find out if there's been any change in the way that Debian and Devuan launched, because if you go and look at the Devuan 5 video that I did 8 months ago, there was about a 1 second difference between Debian 12 and Devuan 5. Devuan 5 was taking about 3.5 seconds and Debian 12 about 2.5. So let's take a look. I have Debian 13 here. And let me just show you how it's set up. So 4 gig of memory, 4 CPUs. I have it running Spice, and it is running the BIOS. Also, I unmounted the CD, as you can see there. And then Devuan, 4 gig of memory, 4 processors. It's running default the BIOS. It's running Spice for the display, and again the C. So they're identical as far as the VM is concerned, which is the nice thing about this, because you can get exactly the same thing. So all right, let's start with Debian 13 first, and I'm going to start it, and then I'll go to the console, and then I'll launch this. Now I'm going to put this in full screen mode so that you can see it a little easier. That if it had started now, it might have affected the display. So that's pretty quick. And then we're going to go here, and then all right. So I'm using dmessage because this sets the time on everything from the start of the boot. I mean, right where it launches out of grub. So it doesn't count how long grub sits and waits for a keystroke. It starts its timer as soon as it boots. So we had 3.17. I'm going to write that down so you can make sure that yes, it is Trixie, and yeah, it says right there. All right, so let's shut this down because we don't want the VM competing with this. And we'll wait for that to fully come down. And I will also make sure that all of this goes quiet as well. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Go full screen. And this time it's Devuan 5, which is dataless. It's not Excalibur. Okay, so that was also pretty quick. But how quick was it? 357. So that's pretty consistent with what I saw back 8 months ago. So Devuan obviously hasn't changed a heck of a lot. So Devuan 5, 3.57, 5107. Is the time on boot. So this is the most accurate way that I can think of to get it. I mean, without a stopwatch, and I don't want to use a stopwatch. That's just not accurate enough. But this starts, and it's at least it's comparing them exactly the same way until it completes the boot. So looks like we're about 0.4 of a second difference between them. The reason why I'm doing this is because System D's whole complaint was that System 5 init was so slow. In conclusion, I think before we look at the benchmarks, this was a distro. It's not a distro shootout, really. I think I would treat this more as a reflection of where Linux is headed and whether or not you want to follow. And in my case, I don't want to follow. So that's my decision. So I don't know what yours is. I'm not making it for you. That's for you to make. But I'm happy to say that the path still exists. It may be narrowed down to a few choices, but who knows? Other distros may wake up and go, yeah, we're done with this too. We're getting away from it. So anyway, whether you're a system admin or an artist or a video producer, or even just somebody that wants to be able to just get their work done, or a person that just wants to, they want a small footprint so they have more room to do the things they want to do. I think we have a set of distros that will work for you here. So yeah, and you can start to look at them and evaluate them for yourself. There's more than one that fits the category, fortunately. Where do we go from here? I think the benchmarks might help. Okay, let's take a look at the benchmarks. So the first one is I used FIO to just run the standard test, read, write, and all of that with, the different block sizes to see how well they did. So Slackware, Artix, Alpine, Debian 13, MX Linux, AntiX, and Devuan. So the two fastest ones are down here at the bottom. More is better for this one. The Slackware did pretty well. It's up here at the top, and it's pretty comparable to the results by AntiX and Devuan. They're pretty close. And that is for the random read. This is IOPS. Okay. So yeah, this is IOPS. So normally that would reverse, but they didn't this time. So those three still did perform very well. Then we had random writes, and then we start seeing the mix kind of becoming a little greater with AntiX taking the lead here. Now, all of these file systems, with the exception of FreeBSD, are ext4. Of course, FreeBSD defaults to ZFS, and those are in their own bucket. They're not included here with these because it doesn't support IOU ring. So now we have the IOPS version, and yeah, it kind of holds up because the AntiX still has the fastest IOPS as well. Sequential reads, again, it's between Slackware and AntiX. And then again, with the IOPS down here, again, the same between Slackware and AntiX. They're pretty close. Sequential write, now we see a shift between, it's still AntiX, but this time Alpine moves up into the second slot. And then these kind of all fall back a little bit with MX kind of pulling up a little bit here. Same, it holds true for the IOPS again, same positioning here. And then we have RAM speed. That wasn't really any surprises here except for Slackware falls back. And I'm guessing, but I think the reason for this is just the age of the kernel they're running. This is a 5.15 kernel here, whereas the rest of these are up in the 6.1 to 6.12. This is a 6.12 kernel here. So there is some differences in memory management on a 12th gen Intel box. And so obviously 5.15 may not have the optimizations in it. So yeah. Also, then we have the triad benchmark. This is also RAM speed. So everybody's about the same except Slackware falls back just a little bit. It isn't a lot. And then standard compression. I put this in here because it's not only testing the compression, but it's also exercising the CPU as well. So yeah, and doing the calculation. So Alpine does very well here. And then everybody is pretty even, I would say, with the exception of AntiX. It seems to fall back a little bit here. Again, on the decompression speed, so you have compression and then decompression, they're all about the same. But maybe Alpine has a tiny bit of, this is noise. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're noise. Long mode, this is a different mechanism, a different test bed. And Alpine does about the same as it did under the standard compression test. And it looks to me like it's pretty close to the decompression speed as well. This is a rendering. It's a small global illumination renderer. So it just gives me a quick way to take a look and put some rendering load on the machine to see how well it will handle it. FreeBSD does very well in this one. It's one of the few tests that actually was able to run without full Linux compatibility. So yeah, and as far as the Linuxes are concerned, though, I would say, with the exception of Debian 13, Artix, and Endeavour, these are all about the same. Slackware, MX, AntiX, Devuan, they're all about the same. And then, yeah, you can, if we go back and look at the differences in the speed tests, it's about 3 to 4 times faster because of ZFS. Yeah, that's pretty consistent all the way through here. Just smokes it. As far as the first place finishes, AntiX got 6 out of the 15 tests. And then Devuan had 5. So this is a very close race here, even though the percentages say otherwise. Then followed up by Alpine and MX and EndevourOS. And in the last place, this is unusual. I don't think I've ever seen Debian fall to last place. And I'll have to do some digging into why that might be, why it fell back so much. But from the benchmark results, it's not that far off the pace. So this might be just exaggerated noise here. We'd have to run a statistical test to find out. So anyway, a little bit, although you'll probably find most of them, at least in this front use case, they're pretty similar. Because what I was looking for, is there any glaring differences in performance between the system D and the non-system D? In other words, am I trading in performance for functionality? That's all I had.